Good morning. Thank you for joining me today. Today we'll be in Joshua chapter 3, verse 1 through chapter 4, verse 24. Bright and early the next morning, Joshua and the Israelites left Shittim and came to the Jordan. They'd camped there before crossing the river. After 3 days, the leaders went through the camp and commanded the people, "When you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord, your God, being carried by the Levitical priests, you must leave here and walk behind it, but stay about 3,000 feet behind it. Keep your distance so you can see which way you should go, for you have not traveled this way before." Joshua told the people, "Ritually consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will perform miraculous deeds among you." Joshua told the priests, "Pick up the ark of the covenant and pass on ahead of the people." So they picked up the ark of the covenant and went ahead of the people. The Lord told Joshua, "This very day I will begin to honor you before all Israel, so they will know that I am with you, just as I was with Moses. Instruct the priests carrying the ark of the covenant. When you reach the bank of the Jordan River, wade into the water." Joshua told the Israelites, "Come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God." Joshua continued, "This is how you will know the living God is among you, and that he will truly drive out before you the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, Girgashites, Amorites, and Jebusites. Look, the ark of the covenant of the ruler of the whole earth is ready to enter the Jordan ahead of you. Now select for yourselves 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one per tribe. When the feet of the priests carrying the ark of the Lord, the ruler of the whole earth, touch the water of the Jordan, the water coming downstream toward you will stop flowing and pile up." So when the people left their tents to cross the Jordan, the priests carrying the ark of the covenant went ahead of them. When the ones carrying the ark reached the Jordan, and the feet of the priests carrying the ark touched the surface of the water, the Jordan is at flood stage, all during harvest time, the water coming downstream toward them stopped flowing. It piled up far upstream at Adam, the city near Zarethan. There was no water at all flowing to the sea of the Arabah, the salt sea. The people crossed the river opposite Jericho. The priests carrying the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firmly on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan. All Israel crossed over on dry ground until the entire nation was on the other side. When the entire nation was on the other side, the Lord told Joshua, "Select for yourselves 12 men from the people, one per tribe. Instruct them, pick up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from the very place where the priests stand firmly, and carry them over with you, and put them in the place where you camped tonight." Joshua summoned the 12 men he had appointed from the Israelites, one per tribe. Joshua told them, "Go in front of the ark of the Lord your God to the middle of the Jordan. Each of you is to put a stone on his shoulder, according to the number of the Israelite tribes. The stones will be a reminder to you. When your children ask someday, 'Why are these stones important to you?' tell them how the water of the Jordan stopped flowing before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the water of the Jordan stopped flowing. These stones will be a lasting memorial for the Israelites." The Israelites did just as Joshua commanded. They picked up 12 stones, according to the number of the Israelite tribes. From the middle of the Jordan, as the Lord had instructed Joshua, they carried them over with them to the camp and put them there. Joshua also set up 12 stones in the middle of the Jordan, in the very place where the priests carrying the ark of the covenant stood. They remain there to this very day. Now the priests carrying the ark of the covenant were standing in the middle of the Jordan until everything the Lord had commanded Joshua to tell the people was accomplished. In accordance with all that Moses had commanded Joshua, the people went across quickly. And when all the people had finished crossing the ark of the Lord, and the priests crossed as the people looked on, the Reubenites, Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh crossed over armed for battle ahead of the Israelites, just as Moses had instructed them. About 40,000 battle-ready troops marched past the Lord to fight on the plains of Jericho. That day the Lord brought honor to Joshua before all Israel. They respected him all his life, just as they had respected Moses. The Lord told Joshua, "Instruct the priests carrying the ark of the covenantal law to come up from the Jordan." So Joshua instructed the priests, "Come up from the Jordan." The priests carrying the ark of the covenant of the Lord came up from the middle of the Jordan, and as soon as they set foot on dry land, the water of the Jordan flowed again and returned to flood stage. The people went up from the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month, and camped in Gilgal on the eastern border of Jericho. Now Joshua set up in Gilgal the 12 stones they had taken from the Jordan. He told the Israelites, "When your children someday ask their fathers, 'What do these stones represent?' explain to your children, 'Israel crossed the Jordan River on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the water of the Jordan before you while you crossed over. It was just like when the Lord your God dried up the Red Sea before us while we crossed it. He has done this so all the nations of the earth might recognize the Lord's power, and so you might always obey the Lord your God." Interesting. So, just as the Lord made a path through the sea for the Israelites to cross over when they were fleeing from the Egyptians, so too the Lord made a path through the Jordan River as they were crossing over it. So, pretty neat. All the people in chapter 3, verse 5 were commanded to ritually consecrate themselves. Yeah, to be holy, so that the Lord wouldn't strike out against them, I suppose. And I'm sure there's all sorts of other significance that I'm missing here. There are 12 leaders from the 12 tribes, and they go into the Jordan while the water is piled up and pick up 12 stones and bring them out. And Joshua puts 12 other stones there in the middle of the Jordan. So, pretty neat. Anyway, carrying on. Luke chapter 14, verses 7 through 35. Then when Jesus noticed how the guests chose the places of honor, he told them a parable. He said to them, "When you are invited by someone to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, because a person more distinguished than you may have been invited by your host. So the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, 'Give this man your place.' Then, ashamed, you will begin to move to the least important place. But when you are invited, go and take the least important place, so that when your host approaches, he will say to you, 'Friend, move up here to a better place.' Then you will be honored in the presence of all who share the meal with you. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted." He said also to the man who had invited him, "When you host a dinner or a banquet, don't invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or rich neighbors, so you can be invited by them in return and get repaid. But when you host an elaborate meal, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind. Then you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." When one of those at the meal with Jesus heard this, he said to him, "Blessed is everyone who will feast in the kingdom of God." But Jesus said to him, "A man once gave a great banquet and invited many guests. At the time for the banquet, he sent his slave to tell those who had been invited, 'Come, because everything is now ready.' But one after another, they all began to make excuses. The first said to him, 'I have bought a field, and I must go out and see to it. Please excuse me.' Another said, 'I have bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I'm going out to examine them. Please excuse me.' Another said, 'I just got married. I cannot come.' So the slave came back and reported this to his master. Then the master of the household was furious and said to his slave, 'Go out quickly to the streets and alleys of the city and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame.' Then the slave said, 'Sir, what you instructed has been done, and there's still room.' So the master said to his slave, 'Go out to the highways and country roads and urge people to come in, so that my house will be filled. For I tell you, not one of those individuals who are invited will taste my banquet.' Now large crowds were accompanying Jesus, and turning to them he said, 'If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry his own cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, wanting to build a tower, doesn't sit down first and compute the cost to see if he has enough money to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish the tower, all who see it will begin to make fun of him. They will say, this man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king, going out to confront another king in battle, will not sit down first and determine whether he is able with 10,000 to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000? If he cannot succeed, he will send a representative while the other is still a long way off and ask for terms of peace. In the same way, therefore, not one of you can be my disciple if he does not renounce all his own possessions. Salt is good, but if salt loses its flavor, how can its flavor be restored? It is of no value for the soil or for the manure pile. It is to be thrown out. The one who has ears to hear had better listen. So for some reason, I don't think I saw this before. But in 14:8, well, through 11, Jesus says, when you are invited by someone to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, because a person more distinguished than you may have been invited by your host. So the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, give this man your place. Then, ashamed, you will begin to move to the least important place. But when you are invited, go and take the least important place, so that when your host approaches, he will say to you, friend, move up here to a better place. Then you will be honored in the presence of all who share the meal with you. So this isn't talking about proper etiquette in going to a banquet, though I suppose that holds true to that as well. But Jesus is talking next up about this parable of a great dinner being held and everybody being invited, but not everybody coming to it. So the representation there is that of the banquet in the kingdom of heaven. Well, yeah, and everybody being called there, but not everybody choosing to come there. So I think like the banquet in 8:11 kind of represents how we are acting in this life, and whether we choose to put ourselves forward as people of importance or not. And if we like assume all these places of honor or whatnot, then we'll be humbled. But those who are humbled in this life will be exalted in the next. So the idea being that, and Jesus did this with his own life, in that he assumed the role of a servant rather than the role of a master, and chose to serve and serve as an example for us. So in that same way, rather than assuming positions of honor, we should be servants to everyone. So yeah, and I think the next is a general call to charity. And 14:26, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. I don't think this is this is not a call to hate as in the active hatred of men that's actively trying to undermine those of its object. But hatred in this case is lesser love, because you have Jesus espousing the greatest commandment, that is like, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength, and you should love your neighbor as yourself. So your family members fall into that general category of your neighbor. So, but that being said, they should not get the same amount of love that we give to God. Theirs should be secondary to our love for God, essentially. That way, we can be in right relationship with them, because if they assume the place of love that God is supposed to assume in our lives, then they'll turn into an idol for us and will inevitably fall short of our expectations for them. So, anywho, carrying on. Psalm chapter 80, verses 1 through 19. O shepherd of Israel, pay attention. You who lead Joseph like a flock of sheep, you who sit enthroned above the winged angels, reveal your splendor. In the sight of Ephraim, Benjamin, and Manasseh, reveal your power. Come and deliver us. O God, restore us. Smile on us. Then we will be delivered. O Lord God, invincible warrior, how long will you remain angry at your people while they pray to you? You have given them tears as food, and you have made them drink tears by the measure. You have made our neighbors dislike us, and our enemies insult us. O God, invincible warrior, restore us. Smile on us. Then we will be delivered. You uprooted a vine from Egypt. You drove out nations and transplanted it. You cleared the ground for it. It took root and filled the land. The mountains were covered by its shadow, the highest cedars by its branches. Its branches reached the Mediterranean Sea, and its shoots the Euphrates River. Why did you break down its walls so that all who pass by pluck its fruit? The wild boars of the forest ruin it. The insects of the field feed on it. O God, invincible warrior, come back. Look down from heaven and take notice. Take care of this vine, the root your right hand planted, the shoot you made to grow. It is burned and cut down. They die because you are displeased with them. May you give support to the one you have chosen, to the one whom you raised up for yourself. Then we will not turn away from you. Revive us, and we will pray to you. O Lord God, invincible warrior, restore us. Smile on us, then we will be delivered. Yeah. So this is representing Israel as a root or a vine that was 80 verse 8, uprooted from Egypt. The other nations were driven out ahead of it and transplanted in the land. But in 80:12, its walls were broken down, so that all who pass by pluck its fruit. That is, his hand of protection was removed from them, and they were ransacked, essentially. Yeah, so, and this is essentially what God said in the end of Deuteronomy, laying out the blessings and the curses. If they obeyed God, then they would prosper, and if they didn't obey God, then they would, then his hand of protection would be removed from them, and all of the curses that fell on the nations previously would fall on them. So, and finally, Proverbs chapter 12, verses 27 and 28. The lazy person does not roast his prey, but personal possessions are precious to the diligent. In the path of righteousness there is life, but another path leads to death. Yeah, in 12:27, the lazy person does not roast his prey. That is, he goes to all the effort of hunting and getting this meal for himself, but in the end doesn't even prepare for it, and it's spoiled. But personal possessions are precious to the diligent. That is, to the diligent, they are aware of the value of things, and they aren't as wasteful as the lazy, which is interesting. And in the path of righteousness there is life, but another path leads to death. That is, I like this quote from the, I can't remember the name of the book, but I think it's Who Will Ascend to the Mount of the Lord. But he says in there that it's holiness fully conceived leads to fullness of life. And I think that's true. So, anywho, hope you have a great day. Thanks for joining me today. Bye.